Hello and welcome to the 62nd Councilmember in Your Corner. And the focus today is all about the community of Hollywood, which I'm so proud and privileged to represent as part of the 13th District. The Councilmember in Your Corners started back in July of 2013, which was my very first month in office. And it was designed as a way for me to go back knocking on doors after a very long campaign for the seat, to offer constituents that I now represented information about how to access city services. It was a way, and still is a way, for me and my team to bring City Hall to your front door. So we've done them every month now for over 7 years, and we took them virtual because of COVID-19 pandemic. Now we're doing them even more frequently because there's just so much work to convey all the projects that we're doing and all of the partners that we have in doing our work. It's also a chance for people to ask questions, and the questions that we don't get to will all be answered in case we run out of time, which often happens. Now, our Councilmember in Your Corners, we also do a cleanup, and you're going to see images of a cleanup that we actually did in Hollywood in the last couple of days, because that part we haven't stopped doing at all. In fact, we're probably stepping that up even more. At these typical events, we also usually have tents with service providers and city departments with information, and we take down casework that my staff then works on your behalf, which has resulted in some incredible successes, such as signalized crosswalks in our neighborhoods, new stop signs, speed humps, street resurfacing, tree plantings, all of the things that really help make a neighborhood more livable, which is, I think, what we set out to accomplish when we designed these Councilmembers in Your Corner, or Councilmember in Your Corner in the first place. So with that, this is now 7 years and 2 months in office. We're going to talk a little about today about homelessness and the challenges that we face collectively with this humanitarian crisis. And some of our partners today are going to be able to talk a lot about that. We'll start, I'll give you an update on how we're expanding the temporary bridge shelters to get people indoors in the immediate. In 2019, we opened the Schrader Bridge Home in Hollywood, and right there at Schrader near Selma, and that's 72 beds. That's been a very, very successful project, because out of that 72 temporary beds, we've also housed over 26 people permanently through that process. So we bring them off of the streets into a temporary shelter. They receive services, even clinical services and counseling. And we offer job training and all that. And we've now housed permanently 26 of those folks. As I mentioned, homelessness, humanitarian crises. We know that with a point-in-time count in 2020, there were over 40,000 Angelenos experiencing homelessness in the city of Los Angeles. So we're working to create more temporary shelter and permanent housing throughout the city with real solutions to address the root causes as well. They include poverty, of course, mental health issues, substance addiction issues. We try to have a comprehensive approach in addressing all of these while getting people indoors. In late 2018, we partnered with the YWCA in Hollywood and People Assisting the Homeless, PATH, to open a 60-bed shelter for women in the historic Hollywood Studio Club on Lodi Place. In April of this year, we expanded this site and doubled the occupancy to 120 beds. We're working with county health officials to ensure the expansion follows all of the proper guidelines during COVID-19. And let me just say that everything we do, we follow the proper CDC guidelines as it relates to COVID-19. Now, we're also working with the YWCA on a possible permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness on property that they control nearby. More on that later. This site has also been especially helpful for our partners who are working to house transgender individuals experiencing homelessness. And that's been a real hot topic lately, and you might have seen the All Black Lives Matter treatment that we put on Hollywood Boulevard. That was specifically to elevate the issue of transgender women of color who need our help and our support. In March of 2019, as I mentioned, we opened the Bridge Home at Schrader, and our partners that are actually offering the services there, PATH, People Assisting the Homeless, and the Center in Hollywood, who operate the facility. And we'll hear a presentation in a moment from both of these wonderful organizations in just a minute. This year, we also worked with Supervisor Sheila Kuehl to expand the safe parking location in Hollywood to 25 spaces. Safe parking sites, we know we've seen folks living in their cars, and we also want to offer safe haven for people living in their cars where they can come and go to a well-managed, secure spot at night with facilities so that they can at least feel a little more comfortable in their vehicle, while we also look to get them housing at the same time. So we are opening more and more of these safe parking sites across the city. And we're continue working with all of these shelter operators across the district. Pedestrian safety, really important. I think you see on the screen one of the scramble crosswalks. Since I took office, pedestrian safety continues to be my number one transit priority. So recently we converted the crosswalk on Romaine and Vine near Vine Street Elementary School into a full traffic signal. Romaine and Vine was the 8th crosswalk we converted to a full pedestrian activated traffic signal in Hollywood. And the 9th one will be installed any day now at the corner of Western and DeLongpre next to the newly built Target. Something that I should pause and say here for a second is that it's not just me. The entire city council that I'm on, back in 2014, 2015, we approved a budget allocation to really saturate the neighborhoods with pedestrian calming measures, including traffic signals. So the fact that we're about to have 9 in Hollywood in the 7+ years I've been in office says a lot. Just to give you some context, in the office of my predecessor, which I worked in, where we suffered from the Great Recession, I think there were a total of 12 new traffic signals across the entire 13th district over a 12-year period. So this gives you a sense of how we as a council and city leadership, including the mayor's office, have accelerated the addition of these safety measures across intersections across Los Angeles. I mentioned the scramble crosswalks. We have one at Hollywood and Highland, of course, and then one at Hollywood and Vine. We're very proud. The incidents with collisions between pedestrians and cars went from in the dozens to 0 once we installed these, so they're very, very safe. Additionally, we completed a streetscape on Hollywood Boulevard between Western and Van Ness, and a Safe Routes to School project on Selma between Highland and Cahuenga, making those communities, they look better and they're literally safer. Mobility. So my office has been working on improving the visitor experience in Hollywood. We worked with the DOT to install digital capacity signs on the 3 parking garages near Hollywood Boulevard, and soon we'll have additional signage in the community to direct motorists to the public parking garages. We're also working on getting 6 digital message signs you see throughout the community operational, with 5 additional signs being installed in the coming months. This will help alert residents to upcoming events. Also coming very soon is another Metro bike share, this one to Hollywood. We just installed a station at Hollywood and Western, and we'll be adding over 10 more stations throughout the neighborhood over the next few months. Last year, we also started our walkability program for the Walk of Fame. The program gives Hollywood 4 Streets LA staffers to work on the Walk of Fame as the eyes and ears of the city and address any obstructions on the historic monument. We're also really focused in the 13th District on greening. as much as we possibly can in all of our open spaces and sidewalks. My office is working to improve our park facilities, increase our urban tree canopy, and help clean the air that we breathe. In May, as you see, my office partnered with the Bureau of Sanitation and Urban Forestry to plant 120 trees around the Hollywood Rec Center. Adding shade trees to the community will reduce the heat island effect and keep the air cleaner for future generations. Where this is, also in a couple of years, we're going to start the complete reconstruction of a brand new rec center without disturbing the new trees that we just planted. So within a handful of years, the community will have a tree canopied street, and inside that will be a brand new rec center for the families of Hollywood. We're also working with the Department of Recreation and Parks to install lighting in the Dorothy and Benjamin Smith Park on Franklin Avenue. Smith Park is an example of a great pocket park that provides a respite for many local residents. And you can also go and work out outdoors during COVID. We installed exercise equipment many years ago, and it's pretty good. I've used it. It works. I want to turn our attention now to the Council District 13 Clean Team. I couldn't be more proud of this clean team that do this work 5 times a week somewhere in the district, around 900 a year, 900 large and small projects in the year. The crew is out in the district clearing trash and debris and removing bulky items. This week, the clean team completed a beautification project in Hollywood. And here are some of the photos. We did the southwest corner of Cole and Waring Avenues across the street from the DMV at 803 Cole. We removed weeds, litter, and bulky items from both the Waring and Cole Avenue sides at this corner. The clean team also trimmed overgrown vegetation that blocked the sidewalk for pedestrians. Another project, the crew worked along the sidewalk at 717 through 723 Cahuenga Boulevard. The crew removed weeds, dry grass, and litter from the parkway, sidewalks, and gutters. I want to thank the clean team for their continued collaboration, and you can always see their work that we post on my social media channels. Now, this was a priority of mine from day one back in 2013, that I would say take some discretionary funding and pay the Conservation Corps to keep the district cleaner. So this is a long-standing tradition now in my office, and the neighborhoods love it, and thank these young men and women when they see them out doing the work. We're going to take some questions in a moment. We know that we're getting some questions on Facebook and comments, and we'll get to as many as we can during this hour, but we will answer all the questions either now or after this ends if we can't get to them all. I invited a few of our community partners to join us to talk about their work in the neighborhood, as I mentioned. Joining us today, we have Nathan Sheets from the Center in Hollywood. We have Jennifer Hark-Dietz, People Assisting the Homeless, Richard Ayoub from Project Angel Food, and Claudia Carroll from Gensler. Also joining from my staff is Marisol Rodriguez, my district director, Sean Starkey, my Hollywood deputy, and Dan Halden, who is my director of the Heart of Hollywood initiative. So let me allow me to welcome Nathan Sheets from the Center in Hollywood, whose my office has worked with the Center for years within the community, and they do amazing work to connect people experiencing homelessness to the critical services that we talked about earlier. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Nathan to talk a little bit about what you do at the Center.
Yeah, thank you. As the council member mentioned, my name is Nathan Sheets. I'm the executive director of the Center. We're located right in the heart of Hollywood on Selma, between Wilcox and Las Palmas, if you're familiar. We're a 501c3 organization with a mission of ending isolation and homelessness. We do that through a variety of ways, connections to community, to healthcare, mental health care support, and housing opportunities, both in-house and with the various providers that we collaborate, including PATH, and Jennifer's on the call, and we'll hear from her in a little bit. The Center's been around for decades, essentially, born out of a ministry of the Church at Blessed Sacrament, but more or less in the last 10 years in its current iteration, really focusing on, as I mentioned, that key part, which is the ending isolation and building community, building solidarity with individuals experiencing homelessness or individuals who formerly experienced homelessness, and really serving as a hub for Hollywood and the other service providers. In essence, if service providers who we collaborate with are looking for someone on a day-to-day basis, chances are that we might know or we might have seen them in recent history. But with our mission, everything really does revolve around this idea of building community and support structures and building solidarity really with the unhoused community, to hear from them, to build a level playing field, in essence, to build rapport with people who oftentimes have been on the streets for decades and who've experienced severe trauma. So everything revolves around that idea, hearing from them and then dictating and advocating for resources for them on behalf, especially as it relates to quality of life issues. That may extend to housing services that we do in-house through our rapid rehousing program or through the coordinated entry system, of which we participate in and are the Hollywood coordinating hub for. We also have an in-house clinic where people can receive primary care that we just opened last year and have reopened in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there we can do 21 primary care appointments per week and get people connected to healthcare and to life-saving treatments. And for a lot of people, this is essential because they haven't resourced primary care for many years and sometimes decades. But everything again revolves around the community engagement piece. And during COVID-19, that's really thrown us for a loop, and we've had to pivot. So a lot of our groups have transitioned to, as we sit here on Zoom or in video conferencing, our staff make hundreds of phone calls a week to individuals that either we have enrolled or other providers have been working with, just to stay connected to people, to make sure that they're doing well, to hear what they need, but also just to continue hearing from them and to let them know that there's a place where they can come. And obviously, we do outreach and we do a variety of other services. But during COVID-19, as a relatively small organization, we've basically doubled our staff from a team of about 25 people to over 50 because we've taken on a Project Room Key site in the Westlake MacArthur Park area. So we're serving about 100 people in that space at this point. And in addition, during COVID-19, we've worked really desperately hard and even pivoted certain staff to addressing food insecurity, which has really been a big issue in the community of Hollywood, and partnering with the neighborhood councils and the other service providers to really make sure we're meeting the need both for the unhoused community and for people who've recently been housed or on fixed incomes or lost their jobs. So the center has been providing a space where people can come and make sure that they're getting their food needs met. We're also serving as a mailing address, and we've seen an uptick in that, where we have over 350 people receiving their mail at the center. We don't see all those people every week, but we serve as a mailing address for folks who don't have a mailing address or may be between permanent mailing addresses. But again, the community has really been something that's really been a challenge for us to try to stay connected. That's essentially the backbone of everything that we do, making sure we hear from people, advocating for the things that they need in the midst of us now being very physically separated. We've really tried to remain socially connected. So one thing that if anyone wants to learn more, on September 19th, we'll be having our virtual hike to end homelessness. You can get information on our website, which is thecenterinhollywood.org. It should be really fun. Actor Tony Hale, who's a friend of the center, will be taking part in that, and is very entertaining and funny. So I think that would be a good way. And we'll be also just highlighting the different programs, especially our street outreach team, which in the midst of COVID-19 has been on the sidewalks and in the encampments, trying to do a lot of COVID-19 mitigation, helping to move people into Project Room Key hotel rooms or other hotel rooms, and ultimately just trying to save lives. So if anyone would like to get more information, you can either email at info@thecenterinhollywood.org, or you can check out our website, which is thecenterinhollywood.org. Thank you for the time. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much for that update. And another valued partner we mentioned earlier, and that is PATH, People Assisting the Homeless. And we have with us today Jennifer Hark-Dietz. Sorry about that, Jennifer. Jennifer Hark-Dietz from PATH to provide an update on our partnership with the services they're providing.
Thank you so much, Councilmember, for inviting me to share today and for your commitment to ending homelessness in the district. I'm going to start off with an overview of PATH. We are a statewide organization now, but we started in 1983 in Los Angeles by a group of concerned businesses, faith leaders, and community stakeholders. And we've grown from then to over 700 staff with 38 locations. And we're currently serving about 20% of California's homeless population. So similar to what Nathan just shared, we do a whatever it takes approach is what we call it. We do everything from outreach to permanent housing and all the wraparound supports that are needed for an individual to stay in their home, to increase their quality of life. And everything we do is aimed at ending homelessness for individuals, for families, and for communities. So that's a little bit about PATH. I'm going to go over a little bit of Schrader as well, since it's such a remarkable project. And I know, Councilmember, you shared a little bit about it, but it's changed a little bit with COVID. So in March of 2019, Schrader was one of the first Bridge Home programs. And one of the key components of the Bridge Home initiative is really the focus on the neighborhood. So all of the outreach providers collaborated to identify 72 of the most vulnerable people and brought them in within 3 days of opening the site. There's a large outdoor area for them to have activities. There's a pet run, there's a bike rack, there's ample storage. And as we do with all of our interim housing programs, PATH provides the wraparound services, which includes intensive case management, linkages to medical and mental health support groups, really everything you need to increase your quality of life and really promote this idea of self-awareness. How are we going to get into a housing solution? We do partner with the center there for enhanced wellness activities, and it's been great since the center is so connected to the Hollywood community. So all of these services are really designed to help people move into and stay in permanent housing. We know we have a homeless crisis in our city, and we need to do everything we can to get the most vulnerable off the street and into a home of their own. But that changed in March of this year, where we knew we were an essential service provider, and we had to quickly figure out how to provide these services in a safe way for both the staff and the folks we serve, because interim or shelter sites really had to continue the 24/7 operations. So we increased janitorial. We had to mark everything off with safe social distancing, the same stickers you may see out and about. We have at Schrader. We have individually wrapped meals. All of the individuals are given personal protective equipment or masks. Our staff all wear masks. And we had to reduce our group size and our volunteer activities. We had to make sure that safety was number one. So we also partnered with the Savon, who's providing COVID tests following the Department of Health recommendations. And so all of this means that folks are still moving into permanent housing, as the council member mentioned. We actually have a 28% of exits are going into permanent housing, which is one of the highest throughout the city. But it just looks a little different. And down the street, we also, what's amazing is, so Schrader is for individuals who either identify as male or identify as female. But we know that we also need a place for folks who identify as female and are not necessarily around folks who identify as male. So as the council member mentioned, we were able to open the YWCA at the Historic Studio Club. We started in November of 2018. With 64 beds, and actually we're able to expand to 126 beds just this January. And all of the services are very similar, except we have 30 beds for young people, so that's for 18 to 25. And we really provide an emphasis on trauma-informed services. We see a lot of folks there who've experienced a lot of trauma. And to kind of finish, it's not all of the services we provide in Hollywood, but what has been amazing is we've been able to open also in the district PATH Metro Villas, which is a permanent supportive housing community. And many folks from Schrader and from the Y have actually been able to move from interim housing into supportive housing in the same district. So we know that people often want to stay in the communities where they're from, where they have connection, where they have those community supports. So it's 186 supportive housing units. Phase 1 opened last March and phase 2 just opened in July. It's partially funded through the Triple H, and we have a health clinic on site, mental health clinic on site, the employment services, everything really aimed at increasing their quality of life, but they can live there long term. and really re-engage with the community. We're also in the process at the same campus of increasing our interim housing beds and really focusing on these exits, out of interim and into permanent housing to increase the flow so that we can bring those most vulnerable off the street. So we appreciate our partnership in Hollywood, and thank you all today. And thank you, Councilmember.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Nathan, thank you. So I'm glad that I didn't have the numbers accurate and I erred on the low side. So 126 beds, that's better than 120. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. So I also have to give a shout out to Faye Washington, who is the indomitable and fantastic CEO of the Hollywood, or of the YWCA rather, in Los Angeles, who really helped open the door for us to facilitate these 126 beds. So Faye, if you're watching, thank you. Next, another partner who I've had the pleasure of knowing for many, many years now, who runs an organization that I have an association with that goes back 30 years. And that is our friend Richard Ayoub from Project Angel Food, another just critical stakeholder that resides within the 13th District. Without further ado, Richard.
Hello, Council Member. Thank you so much for inviting me, and good morning, everyone. I'm really honored to be in such great company with these great community leaders. And before I tell you about Project Angel Food, I'd like to do a homeless connection because there does seem to be interest in this particular group. Although we do not feed the homeless, we believe we're an effective homeless intervention because 98% of our clients are living at or below the poverty level. And so we know that them getting this free, medically tailored food is helping them pay their rent and helping them stay in their homes. So that's a really important component of Project Angel Food that we really don't emphasize as much as other components. But just to give you a little bit of history, we were created in 1989 by Mary Ann Williamson, and the goal was to bring food and love to people dying of AIDS. She didn't want them to be alone or feel neglected. And so here we are, 31 years later, we're bringing food and love to people living with HIV, cancer, heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, kidney failure. And there's so many similarities from then to now, because then no one wanted to get near someone with AIDS. Now no one wants to get near anyone who tests positive for COVID. Here, then, it was really a big scare. There was a lot of fear. Now there's a lot of fear. So we truly believe we were born for this moment. We believe that we needed to rise to the occasion. And so I'm so proud to say that since the pandemic began, we have continued uninterrupted. And while some organizations have slowed down or shut down, we have continued. In fact, we have grown. A lot of these organizations have grown. We went from 45 employees to 70 employees. We are serving more people. We were serving 1,500 people in February, March. Today, we're serving 2,100. In fact, they just told me yesterday, we're at almost 2,200 people that we're serving every day in Los Angeles County. And we're doing it because there's a need and because this is what we need to do. And as I said, we're also serving people living with COVID. So we are the only organization that is doing that. We've got the social distancing protocols and all the safety measures. And there's one particular client I want to talk to you about. Her name is Katie, and she called us and she said, first of all, you are the only organization that has answered the phone. You're the only one that will talk to me, and you're the only one that's taking care of me during this very difficult time. So while she had isolation for 2 to 3 weeks, and her special needs daughter we were the ones who brought the food to her. And we did it because we were honored to do it. And because, as I said, we were born for this moment. In the very early days, in April and May, we were getting a call every 10 minutes. That's just an outrageous amount of people needing our help. And our enrollment jumped 266%. So we went from 60,000 meals a month to 93,000 meals a month. And for the first time in our history, we will have a 1 million meal year. So this 2020 is going to be a 1 million meal year. And the councilmen will really appreciate this because you've been there for a lot of these celebrations. Coming up in a matter of weeks, we will celebrate our 13th million meal, and we call it Lucky 13. We're excited about that. And one of the great things that we've been able to do during COVID is it's for the first time ever, we had to put a pause on our volunteer program in the kitchen for safety reasons. We wanted to make sure that 200 people didn't come into our building every week and possibly bring COVID contamination. So we hired out-of-work restaurant chefs from area restaurants, and we gave them a job. So today we have 8 out-of-work restaurant chefs working with us. We thought this would only go till the end of September. We now know it's going to be a lot longer. And as you know, Councilman, when you hire someone temporarily, after 6 months, you have to start giving them benefits and they become permanent. And that's about to happen and kick in. So we're doing a new program called Adopt a Chef, where people can adopt a chef for a month for $3,000. We put a plaque of a picture of the chef, a spoon with his name engraved on it, and then a plaque with the person adopting them for that month. And it's a really great program because you also get a monogrammed apron, and you get a picture with the chef, and you get to create a recipe with the chef. It's kind of fun, interactive, and a great way to fund them through this very difficult time. And one more thing that we've created during this time, because we're finding that our clients are more isolated than ever, because yes, we continue to visit them, but no one else does because of COVID. So we're doing a new telephone buddy program that we call Telephone Angels, where we have volunteers calling up our clients and connecting with them on the phone and talking to them as long as they need to talk. One of the volunteers told me she was on the phone for 2 hours with a client because that's how long they needed to talk. And it's also a great social connectedness program for the volunteers who are feeling isolated because they can't come into the kitchen. So overall, Project Angel Food is just grateful for the community support. Of course, the councilman's support, we're very grateful because the councilman just provided us funding for an emergency generator. So we always have the refrigerators and everything running. So that's where we are today, and just sending a lot of love out there to everyone who does this hard work and puts their lives on the line going into offices and on the front lines.
Richard, those are such beautiful stories, and it's just a reminder that especially in these times, everyone needs that personal touch, especially when you literally can't touch someone. And through the ages, we evolved into very tactile beings. And so reestablishing that connection is so vitally important. And you just heard about Project Angel Food and the ways that you can get involved. So if you're listening and know someone who has resources who can contribute to keep these wonderful programs going, whether it be Project Angel Food or the Center or PATH, please consider how you can participate, or let others that might have the ability to participate in a greater degree, please let them know about these wonderful organizations. Next we have Claudia Carroll from Gensler. Now, Gensler is the design firm that we brought aboard for the Heart of Hollywood initiative long before COVID-19. We had engaged in this master plan process that Dan Halden is the director of the Heart of Hollywood initiative. So we have this draft that Carol is going to talk about of the images and some of the ideas and amenities that have been created through the community with over 50 heart-to-heart roundtable discussions in person and now virtually, and many community forums that took place before COVID-19. So without further ado, Carol, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Council Member. Again, I'm Claudia Carroll with Gensler, and we're the design firm leading this effort. This story is going to be very different than the ones you just heard, but very valuable to the community. As the Hollywood Walk of Fame master plan has increased in importance due to COVID-19, as we all understand that our streets are for all people, our streets are important public open spaces, and open space is more meaningful than ever to our community. The master plan is a collaborative effort of many people, including representatives of the 4 neighborhood councils touching this part of Hollywood Boulevard, different business groups, historic interests, and various city agencies. As most of you know, the Walk of Fame is one of the most famous destinations in the world with 10 million visitors annually, and studies show that almost all leave disappointed. Consequently, the need for change. The community as well has supported the need for change, and this was expressed at a series of focus groups, regular updates through the Heart of Hollywood initiative, and at a public open house held last fall. And there was great consensus on the need for a new vision for the boulevard. And just to acquaint you with the project site, it extends 1.3 miles along Hollywood Boulevard and 3 blocks on Vine. And there's definitely a different character in different parts of the boulevard. So this project design will serve different purposes in different places. Currently, the sidewalks are overcrowded. They have to accommodate so many disparate functions. 70% of the public space is allotted to cars and only 30% to people, resulting in what we're calling a contested space. The boulevard lacks identity and a sense of place. Tourists who are standing right on one of the stars have to ask, where's the Walk of Fame? But the good news is there's capacity for change. And specifically, there's an opportunity to repurpose some of the vehicular space into pedestrian space. Learning these things with our community collaborators, we've developed a series of project goals that respond to our findings. And these will serve as underlying principles throughout the project. Right now, we're just in the conceptual phase, but we will find a design that celebrates the unique identity of Hollywood, establishes a framework that looks to the future, enhances safety, and creates a great experience for all, catalyzes economic development, provides spaces for a range of activities, and protects historic resources. Our concept for the master plan is more space for people. And furthermore, we've come up with a series of strategies and recommendations to fulfill that concept and our goals. And the biggest change is to remove street parking. The street parking now is only 2% of the existing parking in the area. We're also suggesting to remove 1 travel lane in each direction. And our traffic study shows that the adjacent streets, such as Sunset, could accommodate that change. This would allow the sidewalk to be extended in most areas by 10 feet and also allow us to add a protected bicycle lane. So instead of a 15-foot sidewalk, there'd be a 25-foot sidewalk, really changing how this could be used. We would also activate the new sidewalk with a series of amenities, and including sidewalk dining, which is so important during this pandemic. Creating a sense of place and identity will be achieved through the design of a cohesive streetscape based on the golden age of Hollywood and generally using an Art Deco style. We're also suggesting enhancing the landscape by adding a row of shade trees. The council member talked about adding to the urban canopy, and this would be a great addition to help that initiative. And then we're going to celebrate Hollywood history through the placement of temporary pedestrian street plazas designed to be compatible with other improvements. And this would be a great place for special events such as performances or a farmer's market. Streets for people need to accommodate more than the car, other mobility options, and we're recommending the protected bike lane and in the future, a trolley as an additional option to traverse the street that would be appropriate for the elderly, disabled, families with small children, or just for those avoiding inclement weather. And here you see a view of the concept from Vine Street and the big changes to the street. We think there are a lot of benefits to this project, adding street trees for shade, improving crosswalks for safety, adding protected bike lanes to add to different mobility options, repairing and restoring the historic Walk of Fame, but most importantly, thank you, Council Member.
Claudia, thank you so much. These images are beautiful. I want to thank you for your incredible work on this and that of your colleagues. And Dan Halden for being the director of this initiative, and most of all, the constituents who've participated. You know, as you go through these images, I'm thinking about how it's really for folks who live there at the top of the food chain. Back in 1982, I lived 1 block south, and even then, I realized the potential of the boulevard, and that was many, many years ago. So sometimes I get asked, well, why are you even doing this on the Walk of Fame? And I always say, well, because I think the quality of life for people who live along the corridor should have the same value that tourists from around the world have. So it's with that in mind that we approach. And then what I'd like to do before we take questions is just, Dan, if you could just give the quickest little synopsis of where we are in terms of the draft concept and taking public comment and when we will officially adopt this, and some of the funding streams that might be possible so we can begin the implementation once it's adopted.
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Councilmember. So the project is now in schematic design. So we've taken the wonderful work that Claudia and the team from Gensler and everyone in the community did. We moved into the next phase of design. That's called schematic design. And that involves a lot more specifics. That involves more, looking at more utilities on the street, further analysis of traffic and some other things. So we should have some more information and details available for the community sometime in the mid-fall. And the schematic design process will take us into probably the early part of 2021. The goal is, once we get through that, is to zero in on a certain geographical area that could ultimately serve as a phase 1 for construction. We are thinking about the Walk of Fame in different sections, as Claudia sort of alluded to, and so that in the coming years, when we get to the construction phase, that would happen, in different geographical sections. So this is a master plan and a high concept vision that will evolve over time, and that ultimately will be achieved over time. In addition to the funding that's already been secured, we're also looking at and going after other opportunities that are very specifically available for this type of project. So there are different funds available from all kinds of different entities, different government levels and jurisdictions for things like active transportation, infrastructure, economic development, placemaking ventures of this sort of nature, things that are environmentally friendly, stuff like that. So we've started to go after those resources as well. And if anybody ever wants to learn more about this in further detail, I host a virtual roundtable just about every single week. The council member mentioned that they're called Heart to Hearts. And we just had our 51st yesterday. So please get in touch with our office and me specifically. Be happy to see you through the computer screen and we can talk about all of this in more detail.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. Thanks again to the entire panel and to my team for all your hard work. Collaboration is where it's at to make good things happen in any city, and you all represent the best of that, so I can't thank you enough. And with that, we'll take some questions.
Thank you, Councilmember. Michael from Hollywood asks, with all the changes happening on the state level surrounding evictions, how are we, as Angelenos, protected from mass evictions here in Hollywood and throughout Los Angeles? That's a great question, and it's very timely, Michael. Thank you for that. So back in late March, the city enacted some of the most generous protections for renters with the pandemic just setting in, which allowed people to stop paying their full or total rent if they invoked COVID as a reason for not being able to make their rent, full or partial, by simply submitting a form to their landlord a couple of weeks before rent was due. Furthermore, we also enacted a measure that once the emergency order was lifted, and it has not been lifted, tenants would have up to 12 months to pay back that rent to their landlord. The action that the state took through the bill that the governor signed 2 nights ago eliminated that benefit, essentially, and replaced it with something else. Now tenants have to pay 25% of their rent every month. They will not be evicted until February, no matter what. So we're still trying to help tenants at the local level. The bill from the state was hastily, I think, thought up, and it's very unfortunate. I'm hoping that the state will revisit this because what I asked for when we called Sacramento the day that this was being discussed is exempt Los Angeles because our protections are stronger than what I'm seeing. We also gave protections for renters who had family members or even friends sheltering with them during COVID, even if it was a violation of their lease. They couldn't be evicted for that. They couldn't be evicted for sheltering animals, pets in their apartments either. Well, that's no longer protected by the new state law either. That's just the reality, and I'm really concerned about that. Michael and everyone who's listening, I'm working on making sure we get a full update where constituents in Los Angeles understand what the state law allows in terms of renter protections, so it's crystal clear. I haven't looked into all of the details 100%. There are some protections, but in my view, I'm very concerned about it. Lastly about that, we know that the California Judicial Council took action back in April with the state Supreme Court justice heading that Judicial Council. They enacted a moratorium on eviction notices, unlawful detainers. Well, our measure was stronger than that as well, and it would have been in place long after that one expired a few days ago. So I'm caught a little bit, I'm not real hopeful about what the state has done, quite frankly, but it's not to say all is lost. The state can still enact protections when they reconvene. We can still get federal help if the U.S. Senate will accept the HEROES Act, which passed through the House back in April, and it's not too late. But what we need to do, everyone, you need to contact your state and federal representatives and say that we need rent and mortgage protection. We need rent and mortgage bailouts. If it was good enough for the auto industry and the airline industry in 2008 with the Great Recession, it's good enough for everyday Americans who are struggling and in great distress because of this pandemic.
Councilmember Bruce asks, for several months, the sprinkler system at the Chase Bank parking lot on the east side of Vine has undermined the sidewalk and ruined some of the stars on the Walk of Fame. What can be done to fix this eyesore and neglect?
That's a great question. The Hollywood Walk of Fame is always a work in progress. We work with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and they have a branch that has oversight over the Walk of Fame, including all the repairs. One of the calls I'm going to make today will be to them to address your question, but also you've got the Hollywood Partnership, which is the business improvement district there. They're also another wonderful partner. We'll take a look at the repairs needed. It's possible that an assessment's already been done, so we'll explore what that is, and we'll get back to you. If you sent this question via Facebook, we'll get a response for you.
Councilmember, what are we doing to help those who are struggling with mental health issues publicly get the support that they need?
That's a great question. Mental health issues publicly. So in my research, the research of my team, working with LASA, working with all of our partners, many of whom you heard from today, there's one enormous missing piece to mental health and addiction as it relates to people experiencing homelessness. They don't really get the assistance they need from the county mental health and county public health until we've found them a bed. The problem is there's some resistance out there for people who don't have the ability to know that they need the assistance because of mental health issues. So to me, that's a missing link in the service continuum of care, and I'm trying to figure that one out. We need more resources. We need more professionals. Nathan and Jennifer talked about the work they do. We need a saturation of resources to help people who are on a sidewalk. Maybe they're incapacitated entirely, and they have the least chance of getting real assistance from county mental health. And I think that's an issue, and I'm going to work on that and working on that issue now.
Councilmember, a constituent writes that there's a lot of development happening in Hollywood. How are you and your team moving the bar higher and requiring all apartment housing, both new and existing, to include more low-income units?
All right, that's a great question about the production of affordable housing. It's covenanted affordable housing that we're talking about for new units, and then it's the protection of rent-stabilized units that were built before 1979. So we really focus on both. When someone comes to me and says, we would like to purchase this rent-stabilized building and demolish it and build something else, the first non-negotiable that I utter is, well, I'm not going to support you purchasing it unless you increase the amount of housing, and if you need some sort of approval beyond the general plan amendment, your chances aren't good because I'm all about affordable housing. When we do build new housing, I make sure that we have covenanted affordable built into it. So a lot of the projects that you see that are brand new and they look like luxury housing have 10, 15, 20% covenanted affordable housing built into them, meaning that a resident there will not pay more than 30% of their income, no matter what that income is. If they make $30,000 a year, they're going to pay maybe close to $10,000 a year in total to live there, even if the building looks like luxury housing. We do that when a project comes through that needs a general plan amendment or a zone or just some sort of variance. I negotiate that into all the projects in Hollywood that are not by right. Even the ones that are by right, I pull in the developer and say, we need some covenant affordable. Can you help with this? And more often than not, they do. I'm very, very proud of the fact that we've kept the housing stock in Hollywood at 20% affordable since my time in office, and that includes the production of over 2,000 new units in the 13th District since 2013 when I took office. And I think that's all the time for questions. I really mean this. If you've provided questions to us, we're going to get back to you either with a phone call or on Facebook or however you gave us that question. I want to thank everyone for participating today. I want to thank the panel. You've been remarkable. You are remarkable. I want to thank my really wonderful team that I'm privileged to serve with every day. I also want to thank the wonderful crew here at Channel 35 that are hosting this for us. It really is a community benefit. Stay engaged, and please log on to my website, cd13.com. If you have any questions, you can contact my office for any ideas or questions you may have. We are here to serve you. Thank you so much. Be careful out there. Wear your masks. Let's bend this curve so we can get the economy going back. Be safe out there. Thank you so much, and God bless.